All right. Now this is a lecture. All right, this is a lecture I did, and a lot of people wanted me to do this on YouTube because I didn't get to record it. So here you go. I'm gonna try to get through this fast. I'm gonna let y'all know that this ain't no entertaining video. It's an education. You know what I'm saying? This ain't no Cyrus City or nothing like that. So I named this lecture "The Melanated World: A Non-Afrocentric View," dispelling the myth of afrocentrically biased scholarship. Now I did this lecture because there was a lot of people, there still is in the conscious community and outside of the conscious community, who claim that the information that we put out is inaccurately biased for our movement. So we're just gonna get into this. So I started off with introducing Ivan Van Sertima. He was most famous for his books on pre-Columbus contact between Africa and America. And this is one of my favorite quotes from Ivan Van Sertima is, "Africa is a scattered diamond." So the way I prove this is I treated the crowd as if they were a jury of my peers. And in court you have three main ways to prove your case. So my witnesses are the primary sources I'm going to use. The testimony is the linguistic evidence that they left. And my physical evidence would be art, architecture, and plants. So I'm going to start off with this quote from the Travels of Marco Polo, the description of the world. This is when he passed through India. "For when boys and girls are born in this province, you must know that they are born black, but not so black as they are made afterwards, because it is true that when the infant is born, he is born fair. But they anoint him once every week with sesame oil, and that is how they make them become more black than they were born a great deal. So they become as black as a devil. For I tell you that in the country, he who is more black is more precious than the others in beauty, and is held better than the others who are not so black. And again I tell you one other thing. For I tell you quite truly that they make those people have all their gods and their idols portrayed and painted very black, and their devils painted as white as snow. For they say that God and all the saints are black, and they speak of their God and of their saints. And they say that the devils are white, and so they portray and paint them in such a way as you have heard. And again I tell you that they make images of idols all black." So this is Marco Polo, merchant and adventurer. Marco Polo traveled from Europe to Asia from 1271 to 1295. That's about it. I don't want to get into too many details about these white dudes. I forgot to mention, I'm using all white sources for this lecture, so we can get rid of the myth of the conception of biasly influenced scholarship. So this is Herodotus Siculus. He was a great historian who flourished in Sicily in 1st century BC. He wrote a history of the world in 40 books, which included large sections devoted to myth, legend, and the unusual customs of foreign tribes. So let's take a look at what he said. The Egyptians, as maintaining a large number of their colonies, went into civilized world, with Belus taking his colonists to Babylon, where he appointed priests, Chaldeans, who were exempt from taxes and free from all civic obligations, just like those of Egypt. Another colony went with Danaus to Argos, nearly the oldest city in Greece. Diodorus also writes that the Egyptians claimed that the Athenians and the Colchians of Pontus as their own, and the Jews lying between Syria and Arabia were settled by certain expatriates from Egypt. This latter assertion explains why male children of these ethnicities are circumcised, as circumcision is age-old custom imported from Egypt. Herodotus continues his travelogue, stating that Osiris reigned over the entire inhabited world, bringing with him culture and divine as well as beer. Osiris then returned to Egypt loaded with gifts from every country. So now we got the Journal of the Royal Institution of Cornwall, index 1907-1977. This is Cornwall right here, this piece of land attached to Europe. So, this is what this said. I believe that the first human beings who entered Cornwall in the Neolithic period belonged to a race of Dwarfs or Pygmies and were veritable little people. The study of dwarf races is a new branch of anthropology, and it has wonderfully developed during the last 20 years. Ancient classical authors mention pygmies living in remote parts of Asia and Africa, and the conflicts of the latter with the cranes are described in amusing language. These stories were long thought to be childish inventions, but recent discoveries have proved that they were perfectly correct. When the Dutch occupied South Africa, they met with the dwarf bushmen, who are the smallest pygmies in the world. So this is out of the same book. Mr. R.G. Halliburton has traced these pygmy races into Morocco and Spain. Long ago, Jacob Grimm concluded from the traditions of elves, gnomes, and trolls current in Germany that dwarf races inhabited Central Europe in prehistoric times. And Professor Nelson has come to the same conclusion concerning Scandinavia. The dwarf races inhabited Britain previous to the Celtic invasion, and these views have met with general acceptance. Cornwall then was in the early days of Neolithic age, inhabited by a race of pygmies like the Bushmen of South Africa. Here is another one, Riddles of Prehistoric Times by James Anderson, 1911. The Little Dark Welshmen, the Scotch and Black Celts to the west of the Shannon River in Ireland, as well as the same kind of men in Brittany and Aquitaine in France, the Guanches of Canary Islands, and Berbers in Africa, are all probably of the remnants of the race. The first inhabitants of southern Europe, northern Africa, Arabia, France, and British Islands were a small race of men who did not average in height more than about 4 feet 5 inches. They were of slight build with dark complexion. You can scratch that Lemuria bullshit out. They were an African people. So, you know what I'm saying? We love memes in the conscious community, so I threw some memes in here. They're all verifiable. This is Vicente Riva Palacio, military general, politician, historian, writer, grandson of the first black president of Mexico, Vincent Guerrero. This dude that ended slavery in Mexico like 100 years before America did. So this is what he said. It is indisputable that in very ancient times the Negroes occupied Mexico. They brought their own religious cults and ideas. Here's Carlos Servo Marquez, ethnologist, botanist, military general, historian. The Negro type is seen in the most ancient Mexican sculpture. The Negroes figure frequently in the most remote traditions of some American pueblos. It is to this race doubtlessly belongs to the most ancient skeletons, distinct from the red American race, which have been found in various places from Bolivia to Mexico. It is likely that we repeat, America was a Negro continent. There's another one, Dr. Nicholas Leon, physician, archaeologist, anthropologist, ethnologist, founder of Museum of Michoacán in Mexico. The almost extinction of the original Negroes during the time of the Spanish conquest and the memories of them in the most ancient traditions introduce us to believe that the Negroes were the first inhabitants of Mexico. So here, this is from a book from Herbert Ho Bancroft, The Native Races of the Pacific States of North America. 1874, this comes from page 364, Californians. Their height rarely exceeds 5 feet 8 inches and is more frequently 5 feet 4 or 5 inches, and although strongly, they are seldom symmetrically built. A low retreating forehead, black deep set eyes, thick bushy eyebrows, salient cheekbones, a nose depressed at the root and somewhat wide spreading at the nostrils, a large mouth with thick prominent lips, teeth large and white but not always regular, and rather large ears is the prevailing type. Their complexion is much darker than that of the tribes further north, often being nearly black, so that with their matted bushy hair, which is frequently cut short, they present a very uncouth appearance. It's from page 365. At Bodega Bay, there are an ugly and brutish race, many with Negro profiles. You're going to see that word a lot, ugly. Their complexion is a dark mahogany or often nearly black. Their face is round and square with the features approximating nearer to the African than the Indian. On the Sacramento were fine, robust men of low stature and badly formed. The mouth is very large and the nose broad and depressed, chiefly distinguished by their dark color. Their features are coarse and broad and of a dark chocolate color. There goes another quote, ugly, stupid, and savage. Otherwise, they are well formed, tolerably tall, and of a dark brown complexion. The women are short and very ugly. They have much of the Negro in their countenance. They have a very savage look and are of a very dark color. At Santa Clara, they are of a blackish color. They have flat faces, thick lips, and black, coarse, straight hair. I get the point. Everywhere in California they seen it was black people. Here's one of the last photos they took of the Aboriginals in California. Alright, so we got Father Francis explored Arizona and California. He was assigned to Mission San Xavier del Bac, which was situated near Tucson, Arizona. When the Spanish arrived in Arizona, they reportedly found black communities. In 1775, Father Francisco Garces discovered black men, clearly African, living in a community beside the Zuni Indians in New Mexico. In New Mexico and Arizona, okay, that's basically what I just read. Okay, I know this is hard to see, but this is from the written record of the voyage of 1524 of Giovanni de Verrazano, as recorded in a letter to King of France, Francis I, July 8th, 1524. I'm going to skip to this second quote. They go completely naked except that around their loins they wear skins of small animals like martens, with a narrow belt of grass around the body, to which they tie various tails of other animals which hang down to the knees. The rest of the body is bare, and so is the head. Some of them wear garlands of birds' feathers. They are dark in color, not unlike the Ethiopians, with thick black hair, not very long, tied behind the head like a small tail. As for the physique of these men, they are well proportioned, of medium height, a little taller than we are. They have broad chest, strong arms, and the legs and other parts of the body are well composed. There is nothing else except they tend to be rather broad in the face, but not at all, for we saw many with angular faces. They have big black eyes and an attentive and open look. They are not very strong, but they have a sharp cunning and are agile and swift runners. So I got this out of a essay written. If you download this essay if you Google this source at the bottom, you can download this entire essay. It has all the sources included. I just didn't want to be overwhelming with the amount of reading I have to do. So I used this excerpt from his introduction. And it says sub-Saharan Africans were living in Mexico in 1492. These sub-Saharan Africans were trading with the Mongoloid and Meridians. In addition to having their own settlements in Americas, Americo Vespucci met African merchants on their way back to West Africa in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So this is all just building the foundation. These are my witnesses. So this is a monthly record of anthropological science from April 1939. And it simply says right here underlined, Negroid physical type inhabited the Virgin Islands in pre-Columbian times. Here's another book, History of the American Indians. This is a book that came out in 1844. When America was first discovered, it was found to be inhabited by a race of men different from any already known. They were called Indians from the West Indies, right here, where they were first seen, in which Columbus, according to the common opinion of that age, supposed to be a part of the East Indies. On exploring the coast and the interior of the vast continent, the same singular people in different varieties were everywhere discovered. The general conformation in features, character, habits, and customs were too evidently alike not to render it proper to class them under the same common name, and yet there were sufficient diversities in these respects to allow of grouping them in minor divisions as families or tribes. These frequently took their names from the parts of the country where they lived. So this is just explaining how they separated us. So this is a stone carving depicting a Negroid person in Ouachita territories, southern U.S., Oklahoma, in that area. So research in various fields including linguistics, has led to findings indicating that the ancient Olmecs of Mexico, also known as the Zai people, originated from West Africa. They were of Mende African ethnic origin. The Mende script has been found there, and we're going to get into that later on. I'm sorry if you can hear these dudes doing the yard behind me. Alright, so here's Webster's Dictionary, 1828. Definition of the word American pertaining to America. American, noun, a native of America, originally applied to the aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by Europeans, but now applied to descendants of Europeans born in America. Now this is from the books, letters, and notes of the North American indigenous people of America. All primitive tribes known in America are dark copper-colored with jet black hair, while most possesses curls in the extreme and every level of wavy hair in between. The texture of the hair is generally fine, soft, or silk, or coarse or harsh. So this was written by George Catlin. George Catlin was an American artist who recorded Native American culture in his sketches and portraits. So him, out of all people, knew exactly, you know what I'm saying, what to say and what he was looking at, because he was out there painting them. So now we're going to get into Estevanito. Was probably one of the first American Muslims to set foot in the Americas, born in an Arabic-speaking city in northwest African coast around the 1500s. Estevanito was impressed into an early 16th century Spanish colonial expedition as a nobleman slave and became a valuable interpreter and intermediary during two ill-fated incursions into North America. Now, how's a man that's supposed to be the first African Muslim to set foot into Americas hired as an interpreter if there's no linguistic commonality between the cultures? That's something you got to ask yourself when looking at this information. So here's something else. This is just another excerpt about that same person, the first African American. When a Moroccan slave named Estevanico arrived in Florida as a part of a group of Spanish explorers in 1528, he became both the first known African American and the first American Muslim. He functioned as a guide and a translator. How was he a guide or translator in a world that he's never been in? The only way you can guide and translate somebody is if you're familiar with the land and the language already. So this is from a book, Long and Strange, Rediscovering the New World by Tony Horwitz. Now he has excerpts from journals of people who was on the boat with Estevanico. I know I'm saying that wrong, don't judge me. Taking the women the Indians gave him, collecting turquoise and amassing a quantity of both. Also, the Indians understood the black better because they had already seen him before. As he proceeded north, Estevanico gathered an entourage of some 300 natives and began carrying around a gourd hung with bells and feathers, re-inhabiting the role that Cabeza de Vaca's troupe had played several years before. So not only, was he familiar with the land and the language, the people recognized him as soon as he got there. You know what I'm saying? They was probably like, dang, how you get here, fam? You know what I'm saying? So here go Pedro Alonso Nino, excuse me. Excuse me. Him and his two brothers was on the boat with Christopher Columbus, and Pedro is actually the captain. So, native of Monger, Spain, Nino acted as pilot of the Santa Maria during the first voyage of Christopher Columbus. In 1499, Nino and Christopher Guerrero received permission from Bishop Juan Rodriguez de Fonseca to explore the Gulf of Paria. On the island of Margarita, they bartered for a considerable quantity of pearls and then made their way to the Cubega Islands, which they believed to be part of the Terra Firme. There they traded for a substantial amount of pearls and returned to Spain in April 1500, only to be imprisoned for allegedly concealing part of the wealth that they had acquired in the New World. So I mean, he was a real nigga. He did some nigga shit. He was supposed to give up 25% of whatever riches that he acquired during this journey. When they touched down, he was like, fuck that, and he burnt off. This is from Select Letters of Christopher Columbus, The Third Voyage, volume 43, page 137. When I was off the island of Hargan, in its vicinity, which is 20 degrees to the north of the equinoctial line, I found the people are black, and the land very much burnt. And when after that, I went to Cape Verde Islands. I found the people there much darker still. And the more southward we went, the more they approached the extreme of darkness. So when I reached the parallel of Sierra Leone. So that's what he felt like he was at. He had traveled and seen so many black people, he thought he was in Sierra Leone. Well, he felt like he was in the parallel of Sierra Leone. Where as night came on, the North Star rose 5 degrees. The people there were excessively black. It's out his mouth. It's out of Christopher Columbus' own mouth. So this is from this $5 Indian dude, Jack D. Forbes, from a book called Africans and Native Americans. Africans crossing the Atlantic before Christopher Columbus. Columbus was also aware that the Africans may well have utilized ocean currents to navigate to the Americas, which is why he hired an African man to be the captain of his ship. Thus, he saw well-made, multicolored scarves or sashes identical with those of Sierra Leone, but because of the distance, he thought that the two peoples ought not to be in communication. Later, Columbus stated that each American wore scarves which resembled Moorish sashes. I got y'all in there somehow, Moors. Here goes Sima Kwan. He was most famous for his historical records. Sima Kwan's description of the topography of the Zaya Empire. Now, I want y'all to remember this for later on in this lecture. traditionally regarded as China's founding dynasty, dating back from 2070 to 1600 BC, which is further back than that. You know, they just going off this Gregorian calendar. Northwards, the stream is divided and becomes the 9 rivers, wrote Sima Quan in his 1st century histography, the records of the Grand Historian. Reunited, it forms the opposing river and flows into the sea. In other words, the stream in question wasn't China's famed Yellow River, which flows from west to east. There is only one major river in the world which flows northwards, and it's the Nile. So if you're interested in more information on that, I got the link at the bottom as well. So here are old paintings of the Han Dynasty, one of the founding cultures of China. And here's another one of that Zhai Dynasty. It kind of reminds me of old Nigerian art. It's not that important. So, Prince Michael of Chernigov was passed between fires in accordance with ancient Turco-Mongol tradition. Batu Khan stabbed him to death for his refusal to be obeisance to Genghis Khan's shrine in the pagan ritual. Note that Genghis Khan is depicted as a black man painting by a Russian painter. Now, if you look into all these books, they always gonna tell you the description of Genghis Khan is unknown. How can a man this famous not have some kind of description? So this is the way that the white man painted him. We didn't come up with this, you know what I'm saying? There wasn't no African out there painting Genghis Khan up here sitting on his throne. Thought I'd just let that be known. So, painted silk scroll depicting the black-skinned wisdom of King Fudu Miyu, the immovable one. Fudu is the cosmic Buddha. He is shown with 2 attendants. So here you got this little Caucasian and this little red dude, but the cosmic Buddha is supreme, of course. And this basically telling you that Krishna means darkness. This is how Krishna used to look. Of course, it's how motherfucker looks now. And this is when things start getting a little more interesting. Michael Zhu of TCU, has proven the Shang of Bronze Age China sailed to the Americans. Having helped establish the Olmec civilization with others who had arrived from the east across the Atlantic. The writing style Jai Guim of Shang dynasty of circa 1600 BC to 1100 BC is identical to writing found in Olmec territory of southern Mexico and Guatemala. And the statues of jade with oriental looking subjects also bear testimony that the Shang helped first settle the Americas. Now at the bottom it says well-established link of the ancient Valdivian pottery of Ecuador to the Jamon of southern Japan. The genetic link now proven too. Now let's get into what they're not telling you about the Shang. Now here's a skull on the left of the Shang dynasty person. Now by about 350 BC, a Mongol group called the Yayao migrate from China and invade, conquer, and destroy the Jamon civilization. The Jamon people do not exist today. However, it is likely that because of crossbreeding, their genes exist in today's Japanese. Now, this is the skull of the invader. This is the skull of the African man. Ancient China, Black Lord of the Dian people. This is the African Asiatic general Xiong Cao, which was the founder of the Dian Kingdom, southern China. And you can obviously tell this is a African man, little ponytail, just like described in the descriptions we read earlier from our witnesses. The Ainus, the African Japanese, old Africans of Japan, the early Japanese and descendants. The Ainus, the early Africans, Asiatics, the original descendants of Japan and Russia. DNA ratio in Japan. People the same as China. People Y chromosome haplogroup D system unique to Japan. The most common is the DNA Ainu and Andaman. They are brother to the Bushmen in Bosnia, Namibia, South Africa, and Angola. So this is another, look like almost another pygmy tribe that settled in China at one point. So I'm going to get into Angkor Wat, India. So this is from Nan Sai Chow. For the complexion of men, they consider black the most beautiful. In all the kingdoms of the southern region, it is the same. The Khmer men were described by the Chinese as small and black in modern times as early as 1923. Harvard University anthropologist Roland Barrage Dixon noted that the ancient Khmers were physically marked by distinctly short stature, dark skin, curly or even frizzly hair, broad noses, and thick negroid lips. Alright, so now we into the book The Origin and Evolution of Primitive Man by Albert Churchward, 1912. Now we're going to start up here. But gentlemen, it was in Africa that the little pygmy was first evolved, blah blah blah. Because, I mean, I'm not an evolutionist at all. And it's because of the basis of evolution was built. So if you want to know why, you should check out my video, Debunking Out of Africa. I touch on that and get into details on that video. So here it says, Europe, Asia, North, and South America and Oceania were populated by them. South their words, not ours. Outside Africa, they still exist in New Guinea, New Hebrides, the forest of Bolivia in South America, the mountains in China, the Philippine Islands, the Sakas in the Malay Peninsula in northern India. Excuse me. Can't read today. Alright, we're going to keep going. This is basically a Russian man wrote an article debunking the outer African origin of Europoids, Caucasians. And I based that video I just mentioned around this, so if you want to get into that, you should check that video out. This is an article saying the same thing. Russian geneticists disprove out of Africa claim, basically saying that the signatures that they use to mark alleles, they don't add up. So this is ancient DNA from the first European farmers, 7,500-year-old Neolithic sites. And this is in regarding the pygmies that was there. Europeans today have 150 times lower frequency, 0.2% of this mtDNA type, revealing that these first Neolithic farmers did not have a strong genetic influence on modern European female lineages. We did not find them attractive. We were not mating with them. So here's another one. The light skin allele in South Asians and Europeans share identical by descent. Now, positive selection among Europeans. However, the latter also shows additional evidence of selection in populations of the Middle East, Central Asia, Pakistan, and North India, but not in South India. Basically where we know white people came from, mountains. We show that the light skin associated allele in South Asians is identical by descent to that found in Europeans. So, with that being said, you're likely to sample extremely divergent genetic lineages within a single African village than you are in the whole of the rest of the world. So this is that diversity in our DNA is what they use to basically back evolution, and they separate that diversity in hominids. So in 2011, DNA from 3 African groups was tested and shown to come from a now extinct species that broke away from the modern human lineage over 700,000 years ago. In 2012, another study tested 3 sub-Saharan African populations, and it was found again that the ancestors of modern Africans bred with different species of hominids. So that's exactly what I said. This is what they're doing to keep evolution relevant. Because of our diversity in our DNA, they're able to separate us in hominids the same way they separated the Indians when they found them in America. So, African origin of modern humans in East Asia, which originated in Africa about 35,000 to 89,000 years ago. So here are for the people who claim that you are just an American. We've been here. Those niggas. You know what I'm saying? I'm not African. We've been here. The hypocritical Pan-Africans. The dudes that throw the RBG flag but, you know, afraid to take their claim to what's theirs. So this is the DNA determiner. You can Google this by putting in Native American DNA determiner. This is coming off one of their Native American websites. I didn't come up with this. A black man didn't come up with this either. So, you know what I'm saying? Good luck trying to say that you're just an American. So some card-carrying Cherokees currently have no Asiatic DNA. The level of haplogroup T in the Cherokee, 26.9%, approximate the same percentage of 25% of what is found in Egypt, Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, and Yemen. Egypt is one of the only lands where T attains a major position among the various mitochondrial lineages. Skin color and facial features are primarily like people who lived in these countries. This is why so many people in America are able to have split pictures with all these Egyptian kings and queens and shit like that. The phylogenetic profile of RM173 supports an ancient migration of Kushites from Africa to Eurasia. That's what we just talked about. This in that I mentioned this in a way when I showed you that DNA from East Asia came from Africa. This expansion of an African Kushite population probably took place during the Neolithic period. 76 out of 79 Native Americans have R lineage chromosomes belonging to RP25, representing 73% of the native population. That's all I'm getting to. That's enough proof right there. I said I was going to run through this. I'm trying to get through this quickly. Now, the cranial morphology of early Americans from Lagoa Santa, Brazil. Now we're going to go right here to the quote. The earliest South Americans tend to be more similar to present Australians, Malaysians, and Sub-Saharan Africans. Simple as that. Genetic evidence for 2 founding populations of the Americas. Native Americans descend partially from a Native American founding population that carried ancestry closely related to the indigenous Australians, New Guineans, and Andaman Islanders than to any present-day Eurasians or Native Americans. I'm just saying. So now we're going to get into Yamasee Indians. Now, one of the biggest claims for Native Americans and Africans being different people is they say that the Indians did not help us when the Europeans enslaved. And that's not true. The Yamasee Indian name is not a commonly heard by those in today's modern Native American indigenous forums, but with little research you will find their story is one that forms some of the most important parts of U.S. history in newly made Indian nations. The Yamasee Indians have been described as the most fierce warriors of all the native tribes encountered. Mostly known for the Yamasee War of 1715, where roughly 7% of South Carolina's white citizenry was killed, making the war bloodier than King Philip's War, which is often cited as North America's bloodiest war involving Native Americans. This war and the aftermath of it is said to be cited as the contributing factor to the emergence of new Indian Confederate nations such as the Muskogee Creek Seminoles and Catawba, to name a few. The Yamasee Indians were Negroes, what were known afterwards as the fiercest of the Indian tribes of the South. So they wasn't playing no games with these Europeans. White men even gave them a seal. Shit, that's their thing. If they can't beat you, they want you to join them. So now we're going to start getting into physical evidence. We done got through the eyewitnesses. I briefly scanned through the DNA, and I showed you how these cultures were said to be the same in skin color and culture, and the DNA says the same. So if that's not enough for you, we're going to get into physical evidence. So, pineapples in India. Here it is, right here. Now, the Ananas comosus, the pineapple, is depicted at a cave temple at Udagara, India, dated the 5th century AD, pre-Columbus. Now, what they're not telling you is pineapples are thought to have originated in Brazil and Paraguay in South America. They were first, quote-unquote, discovered by Europeans in 1493 on the Caribbean island known as Guadalupe. When Christopher Columbus and other discoverers brought pineapples back to Europe, attempts were made to cultivate the sweet, prized fruit until it was realized that the fruit's need for tropical climate inhibited its ability to flourish outside of the tropics. Now, you gotta ask yourself, how does a fruit that originates in South America end up in India unless there was transoceanic contact? So here's the pineapple in Egypt, right here. Now a lot of people gonna be like, oh, that don't look like no pineapple, you know. You can see how they, you know what I'm saying, put the little checks in it, the little stem on top. That's cool. You don't think they look like a pineapple. This is how pineapples look when they're grown in a harsher environment. I'll take a look at this. I'll take a look at these pineapples and lay it down on its side. Click back and forward for you. There we go. That's obvious. Now, Edward Louis Sturtevant was an American agronomist and botanist who wrote Sturtevant's Edible Plants of the World. Here's the book. Y'all know I've been to some old ass books. It's 1919. So here go what he said. In his left hand, a white target with the figures of 5 pineapples made of white feathers sitting across. Now this is he describes an idol in Mexico. Was seen to intend to represent a pineapple among the stucco ornaments of a ruin. We do not know what to make of Wilkinson's statement of one instance of the pineapple in glazed pottery being among the remains from ancient Egypt. Of the pineapples as existing upon the west coast of Africa, but he admits its American origin. I mean, I even found them on the west coast of Africa. I mean, American Vespucci ran into some West Africans. Maybe they, you know what I'm saying, they was going to get some pineapples or something. So, a painting of a pineapple in Pompey's house of Ephebi. Pompeii was a Roman city whose art was heavily influenced by Egyptian culture. That's a typo, my bad. 7th or 6th century BCE. So this is prior to Columbus also. It's a pineapple right there on the table. So now we're going to get into the discovery of cocoa. This is from this book right here, Platonic Papers. No, it's kind of out of order, but hey. So, the discovery of cocoa in Egypt was even more shocking. In western South America, its leaves have been chewed for its chemical effect for more than 4,000 years. Although outside the Andean area where it is grown, there is little evidence for consuming it. By what route the plant reached Egypt is unclear. Attempts to explain how its chemical signature came to appear in Egyptian mummies without involving New World contact seem outlandish. This is a white man. About as strange as cocoa's use in Near East is the fact that Peruvian mummies dating to before AD 200 have been found to contain both physiologically processed residues of tobacco and cocoa, as well as hashish, weed. Hashish is an ancient in the old world. Despite the discomfort caused by having a paradigm upset, we must accept the evidence is convincing for ingesting tobacco, cocoa, and hashish at least in Egypt and in Andean South America by the beginning of the first millennia BC. The only explanations for that distribution involve voyages across the ocean. It's not my words, it's another white man's words. So don't tell me I'm being afrocentrically biased when I tell you that Africans sailed the seas and went around the whole world and made civilization before Europeans did. So, 2 more quotes out of this. Has to do with tobacco. They found chemical residues of tobacco, cocaine, and hashish in the hair, soft tissue, skin, and bones of 8 of the 9, including metabolically processed derivatives of the drug, signifying that the drugs were ingested while the subjects were alive. Now, they found 9 mummies filled with this. They studied them, and that's what they found, indicating that the plants yielding the drugs were apparently continuously available at least to Egyptian royalty for over 1,400 years. And they got their time from the timeline of the mummies. So he didn't just throw that shit out, you know what I'm saying? They found them in the mummies. These mummies dated, you know what I'm saying, past these certain amount of times, and so they came up with this shit. So, the sunflower in India. A sculpture of Nandi, the mythological bull associated with Shiva, bears this modeled sunflower between its ear and horn. Sunflowers at several positions on bull figures at Shiva temples mark sight lines to the sun rising on the horizon on key days in the calendar. So they weren't just, you know what I'm saying, just putting sunflowers on sculptures. It was an astronomical sign. They was using this shit for a calendar or a clock, in a sense. Here at Temple of Halabid, India, a live sunflower is juxtaposed with the sculptured stone. The notch made above the sunflower and the sculpture allows the illumination of Shiva for a few minutes. So, sunflowers originated in North America. So that's another transoceanic link. And here goes one more, the links at the bottom. By analyzing the DNA of 1,245 sweet potato varieties from Asia and the Americas, researchers have found a genetic smoking gun that proves the root vegetable made it all the way from Polynesia, from the Andes, nearly 400 years before Inca gold was a twinkle in Ferdinand and Isabella's eyes. There's been many kinds of evidence, linguistic and archaeological, for contact between these two people. But the sweet potato is the most compelling. Sweet potatoes originated in Central and South America, but archaeologists have found prehistoric remnants of sweet potato in Polynesia from about AD 100 to AD 1100. According to radiocarbon dating, they've hypothesized that these ancient samples came from the western coast of South America. Among with the clues, one Polynesian word for sweet potato, kumala, resembles kumara or kumar, the words for vegetable in the Quechua, a language spoken by Andean natives. Well, there you got it. Alright, these things get kind of confusing / interesting. I told y'all we was going to talk about plants. We're going to talk about plants. So, the Watson reported on the ritual consumption of fly argic or Amanita muscaria mushrooms among Siberian and Northern Asian peoples, suggesting the antiquity of an ancient mushroom cult to Stone Age times. Above are Paleolithic petroglyphs from the Chukotka region of northeastern Siberia depicting sea vessels and mushroom-headed figures. That's the most important thing I want you to remember about this slide is the sea vessels. Take a look at it. It's right here. And the mushroom-headed figures. Now see how the mushrooms on top of their head, mushroom on top of the head, mushroom on top of the head, mushroom on top of the head. This is found in Mexico. And we're gonna get into this exact. It's a really small scale figurine later. So, quoting Maya archaeologist Stefan de Borjigad, the little red top mushroom with white polka dots occur frequently in Hungarian folk tales, usually in connection with little dwarfs who live under them. So here we go right here. Above is a figurine from Nayarit, Western Mexico, dated 100 CE, depicting a little person sitting under a Amanita muscaria mushroom. The figurine, which is 7.5 centimeters tall, is now in the regional museum in Mexico. So here it goes again. Here's a Mayan. The mushroom just upside down and sitting on his head. He goes, two more found in Mayan tombs. Now look at the mushroom on his head, just like the petroglyphs. The same thing. It goes more. All these are Mayan. Now this is that figurine I showed you earlier. Look at his ear. Now this is an Easter Island statue. Look at his ear. Look at his ear. Then what's on his head? These stones that the Moors like to claim are fezzes. They're actually symbolic of a mushroom. Now, if you look at this face at the bottom, this Easter Island statue, the face itself has a mushroom engraved in it from his nose to his forehead. Now here goes Olmec mushroom with Easter Island Moor face. Now this is on the back of one of the mushroom figurines found in Mexico. That's the Easter Island statue face carved onto the back of it. Here it is in India. Mushroom, 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 mushroom. We have drunk the soma and become immortal. We have attained the light and found the gods. Now, this little thing here, this bowl with this little grinder is what they use to crush the mushrooms and create this soma juice that they will basically hallucinate off of. Okay. See, we're having some difficulties. Okay. So there she goes in India. Put in your ear. in her ear, next to her ear. Now, these are all in India. Now, above are female fertility figurines from India, Harappa and Indus Valley civilization that encode the Amanita mushroom and the headdress of the earth goddess named Maya. The goddess is named Maya. Now, above on the lower left is a late classic Mayan figurine right here. Same thing. Now we go back to India. You remember those petroglyphs we seen in northern Asia? All these Indian statues are standing under the mushroom. Here we go. Mexico. Mushroom to the ear. Here we go in India. You see the mushroom in his ear? It's the same thing. Here we go in India. You see her using the mushroom for an umbrella? That's what he's doing in Mexico. Here we go again in India right here, just in case you can't see the one on the far left. On the far right, it's the same thing. Using the mushroom as an umbrella. So we even got the mushrooms in Egypt. Now McKee Springs is in Ohio. Here we have that mushroom. And you see this symbol right here. We're going to get into this also. So this flower in which the mushroom grows from is encoded in Indian art. So here you go. India, India, India. That's that flower. Same thing you see on his head is what they got on their heads in India. One is in Ohio. The other is across the ocean in India. Now we have a Mayan pre-classic stela from the archaeological site of Izapa, located on the Pacific coast near the border of Guatemala. Now you see the current under the boat. The current is depicted by a serpent. Where is this current taking him? To where this symbol is. You see it with the X? I want you to remember this X. Now here we go, Sumerian culture. We got the same thing. See the symbol on his head? See the symbol on his head? See the symbol on his head? Now we come over back to Mexico. Symbol on his head. The only thing, they replaced that middle arch with maize. Here we go, the footsteps of Buddha. I want you to notice the swastikas up there. There's that flower symbol. There's the flower symbol. And the footsteps of Buddha. Now you have that corn. Remember the corn that was in the head of the Olmec? This is representative of a transoceanic trade going on. The Sumerians even had it. See it? It's not a pine cone. It's maize. So, linguistic evidence that the Mayans were from Ceylon. Now, this does not mean that they was from there. This could mean, these could be loan words, anything. I'm not going to get real deep into this. Feel free to pause it and look it over. This is a very long video. This is a very long lecture. I'm trying to get into a short video, so I'm not going to get deep into this. So, the Mi'kmaq language basically is a direct connection to the Egyptian hieroglyphs, and this is a Mi'kmaq petroglyph. Now at the bottom it says, at the Mi'kmaq script there were hundreds of different hieroglyphic signs, a considerable portion of which are clearly derived from or even identical with ancient Egyptian or the hieratic equivalents. He also says he has met older people among the Indians at Old Town, Maine, who remember at a time when writing was inscribed vertically and not horizontally. So up here it says the Mi'kmaq were found to be shorter than their neighbors, and both had dark complexions. As far as I'm gonna get into that, so here's a cartouche. This is on the right is how the Egyptians would signify a name. And on the Micmac side on the left, they did the same thing, just a little different design. So here we have ancient Mayan hieratic alphabet according to mural inscriptions, in the Egyptian hieratic alphabet according to Champollion. And you can see all the similarities between these languages. This is not a coincidence. You even have the Nahuatl in Egyptians sharing words, which these, to me, are common loan words. These are words you would need to know. Like, for instance, this word serpent could be interchangeable for the current, how I showed you. The reed, you reed and canoe, two things that you needed, you know what I'm saying, to get around. And house, you looking for shelter, you gotta have a common word, you know what I'm saying, for certain things. So back to the Olmec and Shang. So the jade celt is among those excavated at La Venta, Tabasco, Mexico in 1955 and attributed to the Olmec. The striking similarities between the Olmec and Chinese Shang dynasty symbols suggest that Chinese may have traveled to the Americas by boat well before the early 19th century. So here we go. Similar languages. A 2009 published essay from the Light of the World from the Dark Continent, a collection of essays by Nibs Ra and Manu Aman, offers insight to early Chinese civilizations. It states that the first documented governance in China was headed by Shang or Shang dynasty in 1500 to 1000 BC. King Tai, founder of the Shang dynasty, was of African descent. The Shang were also called the Naki, which literally means black Na and man Ka. King Tai in the Shang dynasty were responsible for unifying China to form their first civilization. So on the left is a bust of the Shang, and on the right is the oboe of Benin, Nigeria. So here's pottery from China and Guatemala. You can see the artistic similarities in the language and the pottery. So now we in physical linguistic evidence. Now this will make Easter Island would make a nice halfway point if you was traveling from anywhere in the Indus Valley civilization. So we have similar inscriptions in both places. So here's a Siva from Easter Island, right here on the left, kneeling in prayer position. I know the picture's not that great. And on the right, you have one for Mohenjo-daro, which is in the Indus Valley. Now, let's read the quote right quick. A correlation also exists between the ancient written language of Easter Island and that of the Indus Valley, which not only lie 13,000 miles apart on opposite sides of the planet, but also 2,100 years apart in time with no overlap. The Easter Island civilization arose that many years after the Indus Valley civilization. Between these two written languages, they share 174 identical or virtually identical glyphs out of a combined total of 745, 226 Indus Valley signs and their variations, and 519 Easter Island signs with many more variants. Both are written in the same peculiar manner, with alternate lines of script running in opposite directions. There is no identification of either language showing any signs of development over time and seeming to have appeared already fully developed in both locations. The only way to account for this is that they both stem from a single earlier civilization. So here we have it again, Indus Valley, Easter Island. You can see the similarities yourself. So now we're going to get to the Shang in Indus Valley. Now the Shang script compared to them is almost, they also share similar similarities in their scripts. So this is showing the Indus Valley script similarities with the Egyptian, the Demotic. Then we come over to the other side. We have the Indus Valley script, megalithic pottery, Egyptian pottery, hold on just a second. Alright, and then that's that Manding script. Now I want y'all to remember that script right there and see how it has similarities with Egypt and the Indus Valley. I want y'all to remember that. That's very important because I've mentioned it earlier briefly when talking about the Olmec and Zai with the Negro figurine. So here we have the Maya and the Nagas similar counting. So this is very, very interesting. It's something I thought was fake and I ignored it at first. Then I got into the research and realized the shit was real. So Flora Vista is a census designated place in San Juan County, New Mexico, United States. The elephant slab tells us that Flora Vista was an arid region. We learned that the Malayans at Flora Vista found the Sama or elephants as a source of food because many of them died due to the heat. The author of the elephant slab makes it clear that the Malayans cultivated ka or maize in the Mande language. It also tells us that the Malayans built a family habitation. Now this is in the Mande language found in New Mexico, talking about elephants that had supposedly died 13 to 14,000 years ago. So this is the translation. I'm not going to read all this. I just want to show y'all it's been done. If you want to pause it and read this, or look up the scripts with these sites at the bottom. And I hate this dude. This show, black people that watch this show have no backbone. They have no love for their culture if you let Europeans credit fucking aliens for everything we've done. Shows like this are erasing your history, and you love to sit and watch it religiously because that's what it is. You guys have made a religion out of not embracing your history. Even if all it takes is a spectacular sci-fi story and you giving it up. So, do you see it still? That's what I'm asking you. Do you see it? If not, you finna really see it when we get into the physical evidence going on. Y'all thought that was a physical evidence. So here we have the Aztec gambling game, Patoli. See him playing? See him playing? This depicts the Hindu deity Shiva and Parvati playing Chupar, whatever the fuck you want to say it. It's the same game. You see it? You see it? It's the same game. Now, here's the creation myth in Mesoamerica and North America. And these are the panels are similar in many instances, as with 1 seated engaged animals, 2 jackal-like animals, and 3 small animal preceding large. So I know the top is very hard to see. This is the Egyptian. It's the way it's even drawn is remnant of Mayan art to me. The bottom is the one found in North America. Now you can see the similarities pointed out. Okay, I mixed these up. The top one, excuse me, is the one from North America. That is why it is remnant of Mayan art. The bottom one is the Egyptian. This is why we have this game here, chess. We all know originated in Egypt. But you can see here that they're playing the game. You got the jackal, and you got this same animal here, whatever they want it to be. Excuse me for the mix-up. Now this is just showing that, you know what I'm saying, we was playing chess. Now another elephant. Now they dating these at 12 to 900 BCE, but unless they seen these elephants from across the way, which is showing the zoo type of the elephant, this isn't a descendant of the mammoths that was here in America. This is one of those fat ass healthy elephants that's off, you know what I'm saying, where they can feed and live as much as they want. Elephants supposed to have disappeared from the Americas at the end of the Ice Age, 10,000 BCE, about 13,000 years ago. So this is a stone sculpture of elephant-headed Hindu deity Ganesh, the remover of obstacles. It is from the pre-Angkor period of Cambodia, dating back the 7th century AD. So elephants really not supposed to be in art in America with the times that they've given us. You either have to push back our civilizations in America by about 10,000 years, which is going to push back everything else 10,000 years plus, or you just got to give up the goose and, you know what I'm saying, oh yeah, they was traveling back and forward. So here we go with the elephants again. This is in Cambodia, and here it is in the Mayan sculpture. So we're going to get into this. Among the most enigmatic pre-Columbian glyphs in Mesoamerica are the elephant images on Stela B at Copan. There are 2 of them carved into the upper corners of the stone, and only the heads and trunks are represented. When they were first discovered and copied over 150 years ago, there was a human figure riding on top of one of the elephants, looking very much like an Indian Mahat or elephant driver. Now you can wonder why they knocked his ass off. This image has subsequently been broken or perhaps eroded off. Now, if it stayed there that long, of course that shit didn't erode off. They broke that shit off. The reason the elephants are so enigmatic is because they are not supposed to have existed in America since their extinction some 10,000 years ago, when either human hunters or changing environments are believed to have caused their demise. This is very reminiscent of India, where the first recorded use of domestic elephants is from the 1st century BC. I know that's hard to see at the bottom, but these are 2 elephant heads right here on the sides, and these 2 little dudes are riding. Okay, so here goes another one right here, the big ass ears, the tusk coming down. Here goes again right here, long trunk. They writing about what they saw. Well, they carving what they saw. Can't just make up some shit like that. So here are Mayan scrolls. These are some of the earlier ones before the people start looking differently. Now, if you notice, his headwear in their builds are not like the later Mayans. At the bottom, we get into it again. Look at his headwear. Look at him. They even have this dog. You know what I'm saying? See the headwear? See the headwear? It's of African origin. See this? Now we got this. Kemet, Ethiopia, Mexico. See the skins, see the skins, see the skins. Now, got this from the sacred mysteries among the Mayas and the Quiches 11,500 years ago. Their relation to the sacred mysteries of Egypt, Greece, Chaldea, and India. The skin of a leopard was worn as a mantle over the ceremonial dress of his priests. Besides, when represented as a king of the Amenti of the West, the symbol of Osiris was always a crouching leopard with an eye over it. We must not lose sight of the fact that the leopard skins worn by Nimrod and Bacchus was a sacred appendage to the mysteries. It was used in the Eleusinian as well as the Egyptian mysteries instituted in honor of Osiris. It is mentioned in the earliest speculations by the Brahmins on the meaning of their sacrificial prayers. Now the Brahmins are from India. When the neophyte is to be born again, he is covered with a leopard skin, out of which he emerges as from his mother's womb. So, vultures are among the most common symbols featured in Egyptian headdresses. A number of vulture species lived in ancient Egypt, so the bird was a recognizable image. In Egyptian mythology, vultures were not just scavenging birds, but symbols of femininity and maternal protection. So, let's get into the same book, but talking about the vultures. Her headgear as goddess was a vulture. That bird was her totem in the particular type of maternity. Isis was often called the mother goddess. Mao, a word certainly as suggestive of the name. Mu, sister wife of Ko and queen of Chichen, as the vulture of the Macau. It must not be forgotten that one of the titles of Isis was the royal wife and sister. So that's not even, it's a similarity in the roles these two goddesses played in their symbolism and in the family. So we got these Shawaptis. They are figurines. Now you probably seen Suicide Squad. This is what she broke open. Old girl that went to Peru and shit. She broke one of these open in Peru, and the little soul on the inside took control, and she was cursed by enchantress. So on the right we have ones found in El Salvador. These are the ones found in Egypt. So this one actually was found in northern Illinois. This is a Shawapti. This is not a whole sarcophagus. And then they found another one in Mexico. So this is in India, hand issuing from tree trunk, offering water. Now in Egypt, deceased drinking water offered by tree divinity. It's the same thing. See the tree giving them water. It's the same thing. Alright. Now let's get into this right quick. Now inscribed curse on the sarcophagus King Ahram displays earliest use of Phoenician alphabet, the quote-unquote Hebrew. Now on the right I have this chart. You can see parent systems Egyptian hieroglyphs. The sarcophagus of King Haram, also spelled as Aram, whatever, you know what I'm saying, is an incredible monument that was unearthed at Lebanon. As its name suggests, the sarcophagus belonged to a king by the name of Ahiram, who was a ruler of the ancient Phoenician city Byblos, as the Greeks called it, and is now known as Jubilee or Jubal, whatever the fuck that is. This sarcophagus is notable for its bas reliefs and, more importantly, its inscription. The engraved curse is said to be the earliest known example of the fully developed form of the Phoenician alphabet, hence its great significance. Now, here goes the sarcophagus. Phoenician sarcophagus. The sarcophagus dates back to the 5th century BC. Tabnet, the man who was buried inside it, was a priest of Astarte and ruler of Sidon. He was an influential king in the period of Egypt, was ruled by the 26th century. The pharaohs of Egypt were already legendary. They inspired many other rulers. Civilizations like the Phoenicians were powerful and rich through trade, and they likely received many cultural ideas from abroad. However, their story still consists many gaps for modern researchers. The inscriptions carved on the sarcophagus are fascinating for the combination of Egyptian hieroglyphs and Phoenician script. At the bottom, you see right here. This kind of writing was created at the beginning of the 5th century BC. It wasn't in use for a long time, so any discovery of this unusual text is considered precious. The inscription on the sarcophagus said, I, Tabnet, priest of Ashtaroth and king of Sidon, lying in this tomb, say I adhere every man when thou shalt come upon this sarcophagus. Open not my chamber and trouble me not, for there is not with me aught of silver, nor is there with me aught of gold. There is not with me anything whatever of spoil, but only I myself who lie in this sarcophagus. Open not my chamber and trouble me not, for it would be an abomination in the sight of Ashtaroth to do such an act. And if thou shouldest open my chamber and trouble me, mayest thou have no prosperity all thy life under the sun, and no resting place with the departed. So we're going to get into another one. A Phoenician king of Sidon. This is the son of King Tabnet. See the sarcophagus with the Hebrew on it, the Phoenician? The sarcophagus was likely created in Egypt, being carved from amphibolites from Wadi Hamamat. The inscription states that the Lord of Kings granted the Sidonian kings territory in the land of Israel. So they got a sarcophagus that says the land of Israel was given to them from the Lord of Kings. Now at the bottom it says the language used in the inscription is a Canaanite dialect mutually intelligible with Biblical Hebrew. Just saying. It's showing the connection there. Now we got the smiting of the enemy, Mayan, Egyptian, Aztec. A lot of people trying to wonder why am I tying in the Phoenician and the Egyptians just randomly out of nowhere. I want you to take a look at the smiting of the enemy. See him with his weapon? See him holding him by the hair? He finna cut his head off. Look like he done already made a couple chops right there. Look like he leaking a little bit. See him? Finna knock their head off. He finna do the same thing. Now here we have this Phoenician artifact. See right here in the middle? He finna do the same thing. And we have an Olmec statue compared to the Egyptian headdress. This is another Olmec statue compared to the Egyptian headdress. This is the Mayan prayer stance, which is even similar to the ones found in Easter Island and India that I showed you earlier. Now this one's kind of hard to tell. If you don't have an eye for Mayan art, you really won't be able to see this on your first try. And a lot of people like to say that this dude right here is on a fucking spaceship. That's some ancient alien shit that they writing Mayans history out with. So, the Mayan world tree. Notice the serpents midway up the tree, just above the sun deity, the same as the Mohendaro tree of life, with the chimerical serpent's heads midway up the tree. So right here, midway up the tree, on the Indian side, you see these heads come off, right here with the horn on both sides. Now on this side, this shit is really hard to see. So we can go halfway up the tree. Right here in this area is the head. You got the mouth and the tongue right here, the eye right there. And then you come up and you see the horn. Eye, mouth, horn. These are this is the body coming off the tree, the head, the horn. The body coming off the tree, head, the horn. It's the same thing. This is self-explanatory. Two serpents intertwined with a staff in ancient Sumer, Kemet, and Mesoamerica. And this is a bust found in South Peru, remnant of the African neckwear. Now this is found in Peru. I know this left side is blurry, but that's all it says. About 600 BCE. It's Peru. This statue right here. Ptah. Then you have this Buddha-like statue in Angkor Wat doing the same thing as Ptah. Now a lot of people want to coin this as a coincidence, but it's no coincidence. Their stance and hand position on the staffs are exactly the same. So here you have Tahuti, Maya, and Kemet in Egypt. See the bird scribe? See the bird scribe? See the long beak? See the long beak? It's the same thing. Now here I imposed the Aztec calendar over the Egyptian zodiac of Dendera. Now this is a perfect fit, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to show you why. Now you see here on the Egyptian zodiac, you see the two figures? See the two figures? When you move up into the Aztec zodiac, you get this double marker. This is how they was counting. This is the same counting system. Now you move over here to a lone figure on the Egyptian zodiac, you get a single marker on the Aztec zodiac. Same here. Double marker, two figures. Single marker, one figure. Double marker, two figures. Single marker, one figure. All the way around. So here we have this Zapotec style, 300 BC through 780. This is a Aztec. I'm gonna peek the headwear, which is similar to what's in India and Kemet. It's like a mixture. And here is Enyotef, the first king of the 11th dynasty. Now look at the symbol on the Aztec chest and look at him. This is a similar culture. You can even look at their eyes. Look at their lips. These are similar phenotypes of black people on two different continents with a similar culture. Nothing these cultures did was just because. So there was significance of having this symbol on his chest as well as the symbol on his chest. These are mochi, northern Peru head bust sculptures. He obviously looks African, both of them. He has a Muslim turban on. There's Khmer and Champa, two of the earliest black civilizations in Asia. Here's the Buddha sitting on a turtle. Here's the Mayan sitting on a turtle. And even in their art, I didn't include this into the lecture, but the in India they have the churning of milk. Maya has a very similar story in artwork. Now you can peep the mushrooms in the Mayan's head. You see she holding them in her hands. Now look at their hand gestures though. Very similar, just reversed. Now, this is Mississippian artifacts. Look at the scarring done to the face of the pot. It's something obviously that was a part of the culture. That's something that's a part of African culture. When I think when someone meets adulthood, it's a sign of adulthood. Now, similar stance. Here goes the Aztec. Hands up. India. Hands up. Kemet. Hands up. You can even see this stance on the walls in Kemet a lot. Here goes Tahuti in the form of a baboon. Hands up. Now all that is the adoration of the sun. Hold the hands in front of, slightly above, or just below the level of the face, finger upwards, palm facing outward. The gesture can be made while standing or kneeling. The ape is performing his first pose of the sun salutation. Just saying. Now we go back to the Mayan. And you see these three symbols? Sin, Inanna, and Shemaz. Just like in the Sumerian art. This isn't a coincidence. By now you should feel like this isn't coincidence. Your mind should be tying things together. And if you haven't seen my videos on my page, Reconnecting the Ancestors 1, 2, and 3, it gets in more detail of these similarities. Now, this is the ancient African counting system found in the Sahara. Now you see it right here. Now we go over to the Mayan counting system. Excuse me. It's very similar. We have best in Egypt, best in South America. Everybody should have seen this. Now, dwarf figures in Olmec and Hindu Buddhist temples. On the right, we have the dwarf figures called Ganas holding up the horizontal beams of the western gateway of the Sanchi Stupa in India. Now over here, this is the Olmec. An Olmec altar supported by two dwarfs on display at the Museum of Anthropology, Jalapa, Mexico. The altar may have been used in religious ceremonies, or it could have been a throne on which the rulers sat. And go down back to Egypt, and you can see how they have the dwarfs included in their support columns, just like that in India. And here goes the left is the Olmec head without the hat, without the braids, froed up, big lips, big nose. On the right we have a split between one of the Buddha heads in India and the Olmec heads. Look at the lips, look at the nose. Only difference is his eyes is closed. Here's the Easter Island statue. There's that little marker that we seen on the ear of the Olmec statue. The art will tell you where these people have been. It always will. They have no reason to lie, and it's impossible to randomize art, symbolic art. It's just impossible. There's too many random ideas that are endless for this to happen. Now, another very controversial discovery ignored by most scholars and never noticed by alternative researchers is the common mistake we find in many statues and depictions in Mesoamerica, in Egypt, and in Mesopotamia. People or gods depicted with two left hands, which is weird. I don't know the significance of it, but it's everywhere. Now here are these, I don't know, some significance of stone bearing ceremony. Now these are found in Mesopotamia on the left. On the right we have one found in Mesoamerica. Now here we have the Mayan and the Egyptian. See this little thing you got in his hand? You see it? Now here's a ceramic wheel toy from Chanhu Daro, the Indus Valley civilization, Harappa culture, now in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, Massachusetts. Now, this is a late classic period, 600-900 AD, Gulf Coast region of Mexico, ceramic jaguar on wheels, now in the Ethnologist Museum, Berlin. Now I want y'all to realize this. I want y'all to realize that when they found this and in this valley, they shipped this motherfucker all the way across the world to a museum. When they found this in Mexico, they shipped that motherfucker all the way across the world. They're not supposed to be seen in the same place, is my point. So here we have a complex ritual and ideology shared by Mesoamerica and the ancient Near East. This is the anointing. And you see here in the Mayans, come down, same thing in the Egyptian culture. It's the same thing. Physical evidence. You see the Aztec? See how he being washed over? It's the same thing. You can even find hieroglyphs similar to this Aztec painting. Now here go the offering of truth. Maya in Egypt. You see him holding himself over? This is him offering himself to the sun deity. Said he's doing the same thing right here. We have the similarity in headwear. Peru and Egypt. Krishna and Heru. Now here's something that's very common as an understatement throughout African cultures found around the world. Man, woman, and child. So here is a Mayan statue. This is found in Solomon Island. You see him holding the bird. I mean, he's not holding that for no reason. It could be a remnant of Heru. Now here's a pre-Inca neckwear. You see how it comes up to whatever dragon or bird this is at the end. Same with the Egyptian. Same with the Egyptian. Now here goes a pre-Inca step pyramid. Now the Egyptian one, I don't think was destroyed. This one was actually destroyed. I think that was just faded from over time. But you can see the similarities in the cultures. Now you can even see Pumapuku, Egypt, pre-Inca. In Tiahuanaco, this is how they linked their stones together. They would pour smelted iron into these crevices they created. That's not a science people just randomly think of. This is something that has to be taught. Science like architectural science like this, they want you to believe it was innate to the people that was living at that time. Now you can see more of the similarities in architecture. I told you it was going from physical evidence, from plants to architecture to the culture, and I've done that. Now, what's unique about these places in India or in Asia and the Mayans, not only do they have these serpents at the end of their stairways, Egypt does also. This is a very widely unknown fact. Now, the temple of Hatshepsut of particular interest is the temple which is entered by passing up a long sloping ramp with stairs up the center and stone banisters with a serpent running from top to bottom, ending at the end of a bird's body. Now you can see the serpent right here. You can see it holding the symbol of infinity or eternity right here, and it just goes up. Now look how the temple looks. Now we're gonna go back. Boom. Serpent running down these steps. It's the same thing. So here we have this serpent bird in the Egyptian custom, this serpent in the Indian custom, and this serpent in the Mayan. Now we have the feathered plum serpent of Olmec. We have the same thing in the Aztec, and the same thing in the Mayan. And then we come here to the Egyptian hieroglyph. This is the feathered serpent. This is not a coincidence. Now here, pre-Incan and Egyptian. These are symmetrical arts. You can cut these down the middle, this till about this point right here, and this is symmetrical. They'll fold perfectly over. Same thing with this, till about right here. All of this is symmetrical. And we have the obelisk, pre-Inca and Egyptian. Same culture, just with small diversities, just like that book mentioned at the beginning. Pre-Inca, and you can see above the little serpent above the doorway. Pre-Incan pottery and Egyptian pottery. And you can see the stone structures are similar. This is another similarity. Now look at Happy sitting inside this serpent. Exactly what Quetzalcoatl is doing over here. It's the same thing. So now we wasn't supposed to know about ships, boats. We're supposed to be a primitive, stupid people with no transoceanic contact. And if this was true, why did we leave boats everywhere we went? 38,000-year-old tableau of Egyptian boats discovered. Here it is. I forgot where this was actually, but they say it's like 300 carvings of boats there. Like obviously somebody was letting them know they had a navy. Relief depicting a Phoenician ship. Now look at the ship. This is a Phoenician ship. Look at the ship. Sail. You see this? You don't need a sail or ship this size to go up and down a river. You need oars. You either utilize manpower or utilize the current. You don't need a sail. So here goes one in India. Now, this is a boat right here found on the back of an Easter Island statue. Here goes a boat. As you can see, this one is from India up top. Now this one is obviously from Egypt. You see these similar boat styles? Even this India right here, you can go to Egypt and find the Ogdog lined up on a boat like this. Now, this is found in Egypt. They say it's 15,000 to 20,000 years old. Now look at the style of boat. Look at the style of boats. It goes in a Syrian relief of a Phoenician ship. Now you see how dual leveled this is? You wouldn't need to be protected like this if you were sailing on a river. You won't even need this much manpower. Oh, well, maybe you would if you got a ship this large. But this ship is obviously made to be put on the ocean. So here goes another one, Sahara Desert. The Sahara Desert. You see it's remnant of those boats that I just showed you in India. So here is in the tomb of Hu, 1360 BC. It was probably a lot later. Look how large this ship is. This ship, now, when you look this ship up, they telling you that this ore here is to push up and down the river of the Nile, and this guy is checking the deepness of the water, which is believable. This guy could be checking the depths of the water, but this ore here obviously isn't made to be used repetitively. Look at the size of it. This ore was used to dislodge your ship from shore. This boat isn't a boat you would see on the river. You don't need sails this side to go up in this size to follow currents. I mean, it's not even a guarantee the wind's going to be blowing your way to travel opposite of the current to even put a sail up. Like it just doesn't, like, engineering wise, it just doesn't make sense. So here we see an ancient boat from Izapa, Mexico, and the ancient Sahara. If you look carefully, you will notice that each boat has the common X and a box sign. Now I know this one is hard to see, but it's right here, right above the boat, right here. Now this has a boat. I mean the boat and the X sign. This is the one I showed you earlier with the serpent being represented, or the current being represented as a serpent. I have never said that the ancient Olmec came from West Africa. The Olmec lived in the Sahara and traveled down the ancient Niger River, which formerly emptied into the Sahara down to the Atlantic Ocean and across the Atlantic Ocean. Now, after all this, if you don't see it still, I suggest you go check out my videos, Reconnecting the Ancestor Civilizations, Part 1, 2, and 3. Thanks for checking this out. I hope you learned something, and I hope you stop denying Africa as your mother civilization.